In the heart of rural Kenya, deep within a village surrounded by red earth and acacia trees, lived Ayana. A woman of quiet strength, she moved through life with a calm grace that masked the storm within her. The villagers revered her for her resilience but whispered dark rumors about her. Some called her blessed, others cursed. Many believed she was a witch, a claim Ayana always brushed off with a soft smile. But deep in her heart, Ayana knew the rumors were true. She was no ordinary woman. Years earlier, Ayana had been an ordinary villager, tending her small farm and raising her son, Kofi. But famine had swept through the land, leaving her desperate. When Victor and his men arrived, offering her wealth and salvation in exchange for participating in a mysterious experiment, she had no choice but to agree. The experiment left her pregnant with 20 babies, an unimaginable feat that shocked her and the villagers alike. When the day of their birth came, Ayana endured agonizing hours of labor, bringing 20 fragile lives into the world. But joy turned to despair when Victor's men whisked the babies away, leaving her alone, broken, and haunted. For years, she lived with the guilt of her decision, until she discovered the dark truth: her children had been sold to strangers for twisted purposes. Ayana, fueled by her guilt and her latent magical powers, set out to track them down. One by one, she rescued 18 of her children and brought them back to the village. The villagers hailed her as a hero, calling her the mother of nations. But Ayana's powers came with a cost, and a dark hunger began to rise within her. At first, life with the children was joyous. Their laughter filled the village, and Ayana showered them with love. But as the days turned into weeks, the hunger clawed at her, growing stronger each night. She tried to suppress it, telling herself she would never harm her children. But one night, under the light of a full moon, she couldn't resist. Ayana crept into the room where the youngest, Sephu, slept. Her steps were silent, her breath shallow as she watched him. Her heart ached with love for him, but the hunger overwhelmed her. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. She whispered an incantation, putting Sephu into a deep, unnatural sleep. Cradling his small body, she slipped out of the hut and into the forest. Beneath the shadow of ancient trees, she laid him down and gave in to the primal urge that consumed her. By the time she returned to the village, the blood on her lips had been washed away by the river. She wept openly the next day when the villagers discovered Sephu missing. "The forest has taken him," she cried. "We must pray for his soul." The villagers, sympathetic, gathered to comfort her. The pattern continued, night after night. Ayana would slip into her children's room, choosing one child each time. She would carry them into the forest, where the shadows and the moonlight hid her monstrous act. Afterward, she would return home, pretending to be the grieving, distraught mother. But the children began to notice. Whispers spread among them about the strange noises at night, the way their mother's eyes glowed faintly in the dark. The oldest, Amara, grew suspicious. One night, she pretended to sleep, watching through half-closed eyes as Ayana approached another sibling. She saw her mother's hands tremble as she whispered a spell and carried the child away. Amara wanted to scream, but fear paralyzed her. She decided to bide her time and plan an escape. One fateful night, as Ayana carried another child into the forest, her actions were witnessed by a man camping nearby. His name was Juma, a traveler passing through the area. He had heard rumors of the strange happenings in the village but had dismissed them as superstition. As he sat by his fire, he heard the faint cry of a baby. Startled, he crept through the woods to investigate. What he saw froze him in place. In the clearing, illuminated by the silver moonlight, stood Ayana. Her face had transformed into something monstrous, her teeth sharp, her eyes glowing like embers. She held the child aloft, whispering incantations before her mouth opened unnaturally wide. The child screamed, a piercing wail that snapped Juma out of his shock. "Witch," he shouted, his voice trembling with fear and fury. Ayana turned, her face contorted in anger and surprise. But before she could act, Juma ran back to the village, shouting for help. The villagers, armed with torches and weapons, followed Juma into the forest. They caught Ayana red-handed, her face and hands stained with blood. "Demon," the village elder shouted. "You betrayed us. You betrayed your children." Ayana dropped the child, who was still alive but unconscious. She looked at the villagers, her once beautiful face twisted with desperation. "You don't understand," she said, her voice both pleading and defiant. "I did this for them. For all of us. The spirits demand sacrifice. Without this power, we are nothing." But the villagers would not listen. They seized her, tying her hands and dragging her back to the village square. A pyre was built in the center of the village, its flames licking at the night sky. Ayana, bound and surrounded by the angry faces of those she had deceived, screamed and thrashed. "You will all regret this," she shrieked. "The spirits will curse you for this betrayal." But the villagers ignored her, their determination unwavering. As the flames consumed her, Ayana let out a final, unearthly scream. Her body twisted and writhed before collapsing into ash. The villagers stood in silence, the weight of what they had done settling over them. They turned to the remaining children, vowing to protect them and ensure they would never face such horrors again. But deep in the forest, where the moonlight barely reached, a faint hum echoed through the trees, a melody carried by the wind, the lingering essence of Ayana's power, waiting for someone new to claim it. After Ayana was reduced to ash, the villagers gathered around the remaining children, their faces filled with a mix of sorrow and determination. There were only 8 left, frightened, traumatized, but alive. The village elder, Z Baraka, stepped forward, his voice carrying a tone of hope. "These children," he said, "are innocent. They carry no fault for the sins of their mother. They are our future, and we must protect and nurture them." But caring for so many children was no small task in a village already struggling with its resources. That was when Mr. Jabari, a wealthy merchant and philanthropist who owned the largest farms in the region, stepped forward. "I will take them in," Jabari announced. His wife, Aisha, nodded beside him, her kind eyes filled with sympathy. "We have the means, and it is our duty to ensure they have the chance to become something greater." The villagers agreed, and under Jabari and Aisha's care, the children were given a new home. Jabari's home was unlike anything the children had ever seen. It was a sprawling compound, surrounded by lush gardens and filled with the laughter of his own children. The newcomers were given rooms, food, clothing, and, most importantly, love. At first, the trauma of their past haunted them. The older ones, particularly Amara, struggled with nightmares. But Aisha, with her gentle words and motherly touch, became their pillar of comfort. Slowly, the children began to heal. Jabari and Aisha believed deeply in education and hard work. They enrolled the children in the best schools in the region, ensuring they had access to every opportunity. Though the journey was difficult, the children's resilience and intelligence began to shine. As the years passed, the children grew into young adults with extraordinary talents. The memory of their mother lingered in their minds but served as motivation rather than a hindrance. Each child vowed to make something of their life and to give back to the village that had saved them. Amara, the eldest, became a fierce advocate for women's rights and education. She returned to the village after studying law in the city, building schools, and ensuring no girl in the community would ever be denied an education. Kwame, the quiet but brilliant second eldest, studied engineering and used his skills to bring clean water to the village by designing a sustainable irrigation system that transformed the community's farming practices. Mia, a natural healer, followed her passion for medicine and became a doctor. She established the village's first health clinic, ensuring no child would ever suffer from preventable diseases. Tund, always fascinated by animals, became a veterinarian. He introduced modern agricultural techniques that helped farmers care for their livestock, boosting the village's economy. Suri, the artist of the family, painted murals across the village, telling stories of their past and inspiring hope for the future. Her work attracted tourists, bringing new life and commerce to the community. Oba, the inventive one, built a solar-powered energy system for the village, bringing electricity to homes for the first time. Amani, who had always been a dreamer, pursued a career in music. Her songs, inspired by their story, became popular across the country, spreading messages of resilience and hope. Kido, the youngest, had a knack for leadership. After studying public administration, he returned to the village and became